What's up, David Watson? Glad to have you hanging out on the Who You Work With Matters podcast with me. Really good to see you. Where are you sitting right now?
I am in Lexington, South Carolina, and appreciate you having me on, man.
Home base.
Yep, yep,
Home base. Now, listen, it's winter of 2025,
yep.
and it doesn't snow in South Carolina. But did you guys get a snowstorm recently?
This is the first year that I remember getting snow twice in the same calendar year in my entire life. Now, the first one was like a dusting, but I'll count it so that way that actually works. But yeah, we our snowstorm, our good snow was 1 inch, so that just kind of puts things in perspective for you.
I mean, that's big time. But it's funny when we think South Carolina, we're thinking like beaches, palm trees, alligators, and fireworks. Not,
Yep.
snow doesn't typically come to mind. Even when you go to your northern partner state, North Carolina, people don't think snow, although North Carolina in the higher elevations gets quite a bit of snow.
Yep.
Totally different. But I remember when you posted that photo of you and your family, or the kids had a snow day, I think, and you're out playing. I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
That was we moved into this house in 2021. We had
Okay.
snow in 2022, so that was the first time we've had snow since 2022.
The kids, I bet, were ecstatic,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like kids love snow days. Even my kids, I love snow days. If we get a snow day up here, like I'm super thrilled. Although there's no real snow days anymore with all
Because
of
of
our
e-learning.
technology. We everybody can still work from home. Everybody wants to work from home, so there's no days off anymore.
Yep. Yep. No, it's miserable on that front.
But it's all good. You get to be the business owner and make the rules up as
There
you
you go.
go along. So give everybody a background about who David Watson is. You're wearing the RiskAdvisor. I was rocking your swag at the gym this morning and did a shout out on LinkedIn for you, getting
For
geared up
sure.
and ready for our conversation today. But you started just like I did as an insurance agent. So let's go a little bit about your background, and I want to understand the why and some of the who's that really helped you dive into the insurtech space.
Yeah, for sure. So my start in the insurance industry came down to I was getting ready to marry my wife. I was 20, she was 21, and my father-in-law or future father-in-law was like, "Hey, you need a full-time job if you're going to marry my daughter." So I took a pay cut to from working full-time at Chick-fil-A and started working at State Farm back then. And that was how I jumped into insurance and bounced around from State Farm, Allstate, Farm Bureau, all the farms, all the states. And I think
Farms and states
it's
from one.
all state
Oh,
farm bureau. They all kind of work together that way. But started a scratch agency in 2016, and did that for a couple years, and ended up getting a scholarship to go to Innovation, IOA's Innovation, where I eventually met my business partner at Mappus
okay.
on the flight out there. And so later that year in 2018, merged into Mappus. And then that's really where my insurance career kind of took off, because when I merged into Mappus, my book was worthless. I was 2 years in, not making money. And really why there was interest for me to come on board with Mappus was my what I did with technology, automation, marketing, things like that.
So you were
And
building a lot of that stuff out for yourself, and trying to move yourself along, and
yep.
then realized you needed somebody else, and you guys met on a flight. So that's I love those conversations. Like, how close are you geographically to one another, or were you back then?
Yeah, so Andrew was he flew from Charleston to Charlotte,
Okay.
and I drove from Columbia to Charlotte, and both of our flights got delayed and ended up on the same flight. We originally were not supposed to be on the same flight, so that kind of makes it even cooler. And so with that, as we were waiting for the delayed flight, started talking about some of the stuff that I was doing back then on Active Campaign. I was
Mhm.
following a lot of the stuff that like Nick Ayers was doing. And so walked through that. And the original conversation was around, hey, can you help me and my agency do this. I'll pay you to help out with us. And then that's where that kind of conversation later on turned into, hey, why don't we just do this together?
Right. That's so, so I love those conversations, right? So who you work with matters podcast, right? We talk about the who's in our lives. And your story, I have a very similar one on my side, and the agency is Jason, who manages our life and disability and also handles a lot of our, some bigger clients on the commercial side of it. We live at the time when we met, we lived about 8 doors away from one another, but we had never met until we were both in Miami on a sales rewards trip for the same MGA. So we met
That's
at a
funny.
bar in Miami on a rewards trip and realized that we lived right next door to each other. Then fast
Small
forward
world.
12 years, he's a great contributor to the agency, and we work really well together. So you never know who you're going to meet, when you're going to meet, how you're going to meet, and all those things. You hear it in love and life a lot, and the business stories, are just as cool, if not cooler to me. when it
100%.
comes down to
Yeah,
when it comes down to that. So, and without that meeting, without you taking that leap to join Mappus and Andrew and move things to another level, who knows where you'd be today?
for sure. Yeah, no, a lot of how I learned how to sell more on value and not price, which is a lot of what I preach now and what I've created these processes and this application around. I learned there,
Right.
and it thinking back on it, it's really cool to think about where it started and what all has gone on since then.
Right. So process, you brought up the processes, right? The technology, the automation, all that is great. If you don't have the right processes and the right people to push those buttons for you, you were posting recently about bad data going into the system, right? Garbage in,
Yep.
garbage out. That's certainly a problem. I don't want to say it's a problem, but it happens from time to time in our agency too. We're not innocent for any of that. Sometimes there's bad data or there's missing data, right? We're missing a phone number, and the automated SMS is supposed to go out, but it can't go
Yep.
anywhere because it just goes dead on us.
Yep.
Same thing with having bad emails or the wrong email. You're emailing the wrong person, right? In the conversation, you're not talking to the right people, so that can
I
go
think
awry also.
I think to kind of expand on that a little bit, one of the things that I think a lot of agencies don't take into consideration is when you're working with a couple, and a lot of our new business comes from home purchases.
Right.
On when the home is being bought, one of the spouses is probably going to be the point of contact. You're probably not going to talk with both, but it's very common that a year or a year or two down the road, the person who handles that conversation switches.
Could be.
So it's important to get the primary contact's email, but if you don't get the secondary contact,
Right.
as soon as that switches without you ever knowing, and if you haven't been communicating with your content or with your updates and things like that, well, they have no relationship with your agency. And so your client instantly becomes a cold prospect, and they're not going to know to reach out to you. They're going to see, oh man, I'm taking this over for my husband or my wife, and we're paying way too much. I'm going to go get quotes and never contact you.
Right.
So like that's one of the things that with at the very beginning of our process is you say married, it sets it up to ask for the co-applicant or the spouse's
Right.
information, so that way you can communicate with them from the first day. So that way they have a relationship with you too.
Right. Having that capability and putting that brand awareness out to the other partner is super important. I'm reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's book right now, Be Useful, I think is the title of it. And he talks about, in the 60s, he was working in a home goods and a tile store, and, all about the sales process, right? When a husband and wife come into the store, you obviously start talking to the husband because you think he's the one paying the bill and he's the decision maker, but it's really the wife making the decisions. The husband's
Yeah.
just there to write the check. It's knowing your audience is super important, but being able to pivot, to your point, to the alternate audience, I think is important, and collecting that data appropriately, which is where RiskAdvisor advises and guides us to make sure that the team is collecting that data appropriately, is super helpful, right? You
Yep.
built a system to lead the conversation when it comes to collecting data for personal insurance, for home and auto, and it's super helpful with the onboarding and intake process. So, you know, tell me when you started Risk Advisor and what made you take that leap to being able to build a platform, invest in a platform to then be able to resell a platform to help other insurance agents.
Yeah, so it started back in 2020. I remember back then I was uh, somehow able to be part of the 4 a.m. club. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. every morning and getting a couple hours of work in. A lot of that time was spent around, okay, we've got this fillable PDF. We have this second fillable PDF that we have to fill out to send over to our VA. Looking at everybody in the agency, each person was doing a little bit different process.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking at some of the providers out there that some of them are no longer there, some of them are still there, trying to figure out, okay, what platform do we need to buy to fix this?
Okay.
And there were a lot of platforms out there that I felt like, okay, 25, 35, 50% of what I'm looking for was there, but not anything close enough to do what I was looking for. And so ended up just building it myself on a low code platform. Um, I think I estimated that I probably spent about 60 hours building this thing out before putting a submission through it.
Wow.
And that estimate's probably a little low, but gave it to our team, and it was one of those things that, like me personally, the year before, I wrote $500,000 of personal lines premium. The year after, where I had it for a full year, I wrote over $1.2 million of personal lines premium.
Wow.
And one of our producers, when I told her I was going to be leaving the agency to go full time with RiskAdvisor, uh, she told me a cool story about, she remembered the first summer, the summer before and the summer after, where the summer before she was having to wake up 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning to get all of her work done and get it out to market and do all the things. And then the summer afterwards, she told me, she's like, I stopped having to do that. I was writing more business. I was more efficient. I was more effective. I was closing more business, but that didn't mean that I had to do these other processes that require me to wake up early.
Right.
And so it was just a cool success story of what that allowed her to do in her personal time, where she wasn't having to work beyond what we were expecting, but she was writing even more business.
Right. That's so cool. I mean, we've implemented Risk Advisor in the agency. We've also implemented Gaia recently. So now we're able to take the data from the Risk Advisor and get it out to market so much faster. And Rich on my team, who handles most of that transition process to get the quoting done, is the fastest guy in the office. Don't
Yeah.
tell the rest of my staff this, but Rich is like, he's supersonic when it comes to it because he's got the technology and he's got a really solid process. So super important is having that internal process as well is only as good as a technology. And I think you may be coming down or coming up to Atlantic City this June potentially for a trade show, but I'm putting together a panel conversation at the PIA conference in Atlantic City in June about people, processes, and the technology, right? Because
Love
you
it.
need all three.
Yep.
Not too long ago, we sat on a Google Workspace workshop because they had the new Notebook LM, which is such a cool feature to tie into Gemini. But now it's like, how do we actually use it, right?
Yeah.
Like, now I've got to find the guy, the company, the person to help us put it into play and create that process around putting the playbook into the Notebook LM on Google Workspace and letting Gemini do what Gemini does to help us integrate and organize it and then distribute it so that the team can get to use it. So a lot of work involved when it comes to AI automation
Oh
and
yeah.
technology.
Yeah. One thing I love about what you were just talking about with that panel is, I think there's a couple different ways to think about technology. And obviously when you're talking about different thought processes, there's technically not a wrong way and a right way. It's just what makes the most sense for you.
Sure.
But one of the things that I felt really convicted about is my focus on technology is to not replace my employees or require less employees.
Right.
My focus is kind of what we were talking about earlier, where, hey, this person that was is expected to work 40 hours a week was working 60 hours a week because she just couldn't keep up. Now she's able to actually only work 40 and she's doing more.
Mhm.
So if done correctly between the technology and the processes, because it can't be either or, it's got to be both. For a lot of this, allows you to empower your team members and allows them to do more in the time that is expected of them, without requiring above and beyond of what is required of them.
Right. No, that makes total sense. And with the turmoil of the current insurance marketplace, where we are doing so much more we're doing more to get less is kind of what it feels like.
Yep.
People are upset. People don't understand. People are upset because they don't understand.
Yep.
So it's up to us to do a lot of educating, have a lot of conversations. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of shopping, or a lot of changing, but there's a lot of shopping to just kind of satisfy that itch, that urge, that need to make sure we are providing the best value policy out there. So we are
For
doing
sure.
the extra work, and technology is able to help us do that. And between RiskAdvisor, agency Zoom, Gaia, and everything else in between, our phone systems even help us with getting the text messages out so that the data is recorded, because recording the data and making sure we have clean notes and understand what we've done for people is super important should a situation arise. But you know
100%.
that's neither here nor there. So listen, so we started this conversation off of a post that you put onto LinkedIn at the beginning of 2025. I think it was a post that you put up, talking about, I'm going to go read a book. And it was, or reread a book, because it seems like everybody that's picked up this book, this Atomic Habits book, by James Clear, has read it. Caitlin's taking a picture. Jeez. Has read it more than once, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's gone through this more than once, which means you can't learn and adopt and pick everything up from this all at once. And I remember the first time I actually picked this book up, um, I put it down. I didn't get very far. This time around, I put it in my ears. I put it on Audible, and
Yep.
I'm like, all right, I'm going to go through it again because everybody loves it and everybody always talks about it. And there's been some really good books. I've been reading a lot lately, and getting a lot of good content. Um, but this one in particular, I'm like, all right, what's the one thing that I can get out of it? So tell me, why do you like this book? Why did you post about it on LinkedIn? Was it just for accountability, or was it, to create content and get some engagement out of it? And what are the things that you use and have taken out of Atomic Habits in your business?
Yeah. So all of the above. I think when talking about content, what you I've seen your post or your comments on a couple of things where owning your content that is with things that are real to you is extremely important. So yeah, the part of it was definitely engagement. Anytime you talk about atomic habits, especially in January, you're going to get engagement. So uh,
Not so
I,
much in July. It's like,
I just
you
want
know,
to like I don't think James Clear will ever announce it, but I just want to see a chart of his book sales of December into December, beginning of January compared to the rest of the year. But no, I think when it comes down to with habits and a lot of what he talks about is a lot of the things that I get out. I think this was the fourth time through. A lot of things that I get out of it is talking about, hey, I'm not doing task, I'm becoming something new. And talking about your identity. Like one of the things that started before that, but um, around October of last year, I just realized that like, hey, I'm done being this fat slob. I saw a picture of myself from an unflattering angle. I knew I was struggling with it already, but at a conference. I was waiting in line and I just saw like, I hate this person. And
All right.
so I've been on a journey since October, losing weight. Um, Hopefully on Monday when I weigh in, I'm right at that 40 pounds down mark.
Good for you.
And so like where like James, he talks about I am a runner. And like when I think back to around October, I was like, I am healthy and I am going to be healthy because I am healthy and what all that contributes to your life.
Right.
And one of the things that like has been different this go around, because I'm notorious, like you look like I look back at my life, I've done a great job of losing weight. And then if I lose 20 pounds with it, guaranteed the next 18 months, I put on 35 pounds.
Hmm.
Like every time I do something, I come back and go to the next level. And what's been different this time is um, I've been really like with that mentality of being healthy. It's been a situation that I'm not mad at myself when I enjoy myself. Like if I'm going out to eat and I want a dessert and it puts me over my calorie limit for the day, that's okay. Like I am a healthy person. I'm gonna get back. Like it's not about getting back on track. It's just about, hey, enjoy life. But overall, I'm a healthy person. Don't let this one dessert turn into your habit of having 4 or 5 desserts a week.
Right.
Um, and then also like when like talking about the business piece, one of the things that has always resonated with me is how he talks about the difference between 1% better and 1% worse. Where 1% better, I have this pulled up so that way I would get it right, but 1% better over a year gets you 37 times better in that year.
Okay.
1% worse every day gets you to almost zero. And when you're building a business, no matter what type of business it is, just focusing on being that 1% better is where those dividends come in.
I think that's one of the
Um,
biggest takeaways of the book. The way that he
yeah,
explains it, it's like it's a small changes, right? Tiny habits. Tiny habits is actually a different book, um, by a different author, but it's all about those tiny changes, right? What can you do to be 1% better? And I take those similar concepts from other authors, about winning, right? Benjamin Hardy in Gap in the Gain, Dan Sullivan, they
10x.
talk about what are your 3 wins for the day and what are your 3 wins going to be for tomorrow. That's the same thing as 1% better, right? Winning makes you better, right? Identifying what's positive, that those mindset opportunities is what's going to make you better, right? So it's all about small changes. It's not necessarily going into, okay, I need to understand everything about habit stacking or, anything else. It's I bet you if we took a poll, what the one thing is out of Atomic Habits, it's going to be that 1%. That
Yeah.
1% better is going to be it has to be the biggest takeaway out of this book. And rereading that section over and over and understanding it and just remembering it, and that positive affirmation, I think could go a long way, because that's for my team, for your team. And your team is growing tremendously, by the way. I'm very proud to see you continuing to
Thank you.
add. We just did a book review on Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're buying back your time so that you can do those things that are important to you,
Yep.
are of higher value to you, to continue to grow RiskAdvisor. So super super pumped to see you continuing to grow on that side. But it all these books, these daily improvement things, they tie in. They're small things. They're enjoyable to listen to. They're enjoyable to read. We just have to figure out what we can continue to do as human beings to get 1% better, whether it's in business or at home or with your kids, or with your diet, and getting more exercise in. Like I love to put the earbuds in and listen to books and go walking,
Yep.
right? That's been my thing for just over a year now, maybe going on to 2 years, is spending a lot of time on foot walking. And that's where I get my book time in. If I'm out on my feet for an hour walking, that's an hour of book time. Or I'm on the phone. I
Yeah.
don't need to be at my desk to be on the phone. I could be out walking and be on the phone and have great conversations, with prospects, with clients, with team members, and get a lot of things done. So, not being tied to a desk is beneficial in certain instances when you don't have to be doing active work on a computer screen.
Love it. No, you're spot on.
So it's all good stuff. So great book. I'm glad you posted the that you were getting into it. I'm glad I picked it up again and got through it and enjoyed it. And maybe next January you're gonna put the same post up there, but that's we got to do it again. We got to read it again and go through it and enjoy it. So what's next? What's new on the horizon for you? Anything you want to spill the beans on with RiskAdvisor? What do you got?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a big year for conferences for us. We're excited to have it in the budget to hit up some of those. Definitely looking forward to hearing more information about y'all's uh, up in Atlantic City in June. We're hitting up Florida next month, so looking forward to a little bit better weather for a little bit. Because what you probably think of South Carolina is truly Florida, and what I think of Florida. So hopefully we don't go down there in a week where it's cold for Florida. But yeah, so really excited about what we're going to be able to do on the marketing side of things, because up until this year, it's all been word of mouth and just my connection to the industry. This year, we're doing some outbound. We're sending out our newest feature, client facing quote forms. We've got a way to mock this up for agencies. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to agencies that we've talked to in the past, but also ones that we see online and saying, "Hey, we checked out your website. We think we can help you with your intake process. Here's what it would look like for you. Play around with it." And it's something that they can actually see, look and feel in the see how it would work for them. And the feedback on that has been great. Yeah, full steam ahead, man.
That's great. David Watson, RiskAdvisor, thank you so much for being a who in my life to help me with all things insurance process, and drinking beer together too. So I can't wait
Absolutely.
to see you at the next opportunity. And thanks again for joining me to talk about who you work with matters.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.